Hi, folks. Today we're talking with Michael Cuccolo, writer and producer of the new upcoming comedy Lucky Number, which will be available on video on demand September 1st and will then be released on DVD through Walmart October 6th and then nationwide October 20th from Vision Films. How are you today, Mike?
I'm doing great. Thank you, James.
Well, let's talk a little bit about your new movie, Lucky Number. The plot revolves around an aspiring New York City sportscaster whose life is not going very well, but then almost magically he goes shopping for a new phone, receives the old cell phone number of a famous basketball superstar, one who just happens to be his idol. Now, naturally, he takes advantage of all the perks that come along with it, but amazingly, this is based on a true story that actually happened to a friend of yours. Can you elaborate on that?
So in a past life before becoming a filmmaker, I had taken a couple of my clients out for a round of golf, and I spent 4.5 hours on the golf course convincing them to give me business in my past life. And afterwards, we went inside. We were having some drinks in the men's grill room, and one of my clients had brought his younger brother, who had just graduated from college and just got a job at the firm. And he sits there and he says, "Hey, tell Michael about A-Rod's phone." And he proceeds to show me text messages that he got because tells me that he has the old cell number of Álex Rodríguez. And at first I didn't believe it, but he proceeded to show me text messages going back several weeks now that were all sorts of things, from special offers and gifts to female propositions to invites to A-list events, not only in New York City, but part of the way that how we're able to piece it together is that they literally could follow the Yankees around the country because they were getting invites in every city that the Yankees were going to for an away series. They would get invites to events in that city, and women would be reaching out and all sorts of fun stuff. Being three typical New York guys, Brett, his brother, and their buddy from high school were able to step into the A-list life of A-Rod and respond to invites to some events like the Victoria's Secret fashion show after party and a couple openings of restaurants in the city. They would get the text message, "Hey, Álex, you're on the list tonight. Please come and join us. Victoria's Secret fashion show after party. Passes are at backstage." This is when I believe it was in Bryant Park. My friend simply texts back, "Hey, I can't make it. Do me a favor, put my boy Brett V +2 on the list. I'll owe you one."
Wow.
And, when I heard that story, now keep in mind, I just, took these gentlemen in 4 hours of golf and, business expense and, trying to convince them to give me business. I knew that in 8 months or time or so that I was going to be giving up a very successful career in New York and moving to LA to become a writer-producer. But I couldn't at that time say to them, "Hey, I know that I just told you guys for the last 4 hours to give me business, but this is what I've really got going on. I'm white-knuckling the table because this is the best movie concept I ever heard, but I can't really say anything about it at this point in time." So I left that day, and I just really let it germinate for a couple weeks. And I had, spoken to a couple people who I had met within the business while I was kind of pursuing this part-time. All of them, everybody was like, "That's your first movie. That's your first movie. Concept is really high. Go for it." So I moved to LA several months later. Prior to moving, I reached out to the real-life Brett. His name is Brett Verricchio. And I said to him, "Hey, man, I don't know if you remember, we had this conversation after golf, et cetera, et cetera. This is what I'm really going to do within the next month. I'm going to be resigning from Tobron, and I'm going to be moving to the West Coast and pursuing this dream I've had my whole life of being a filmmaker. And I'm not sure where it fits in, but I want to purchase the rights, your life rights to your story and pursue getting it made as maybe my first film, but certainly, one of my first films." So he and I, cut together a very fair deal because I, told him it was all kind of pie in the sky, but if I can get it done, we would work something out. And here we are, I guess, what is it, about 5 years later, a little less than 5 years later, that film is done, and we're going to be out into the world September 1st.
Well, what kind of feedback have you been getting in general? I mean, I know I got to review the movie, and I gave it a very positive review, but have you been getting any feedback from any other people?
Yeah, I mean, everything that we've gotten since our really second test screening has been super positive, James. Just really, we're able to get away with some really raunchy stuff because at the end of the day, I think we have such a strong female lead. The love story plays so well that, we were able to get away with some less than tasteful jokes and moments that, the reality has happened between guys, especially guys who grew up where I grew up, which is here, in New York City, and 20-something in a period of life where, a guy, unfortunately, we spend way too much time thinking about drinking and chasing girls.
Right.
and it's probably not the most fruitful use of our time or of our brain cells, but it's what it is. It happened. I really wanted to stay really true to really the experiences that me and my friends have had growing up, kids, New York, New Jersey, and then getting that first job at a college and living in the city and being surrounded by all of this great stuff. But, the frustration, like, I really don't have any money to do anything.
Right, we've all been there.
After I pay my, my commute to work and lunch at work and my rent and this, that, the other thing, at the end of the month I got $115 to stretch, and that doesn't go very far in the Big Apple.
Right.
So I took a lot from my experience. Matter of fact, our Jersey landscaper Guido, Michael Pazzo, is loosely based on me as a younger guy and some of the fun that me and my friends had. There's a lot of truths from my life and my friends' lives woven in. And we did, we were inspired by the events, with my friend getting A-Rod's phone, and that was really the driving force. And believe it or not, we do have 3 characters in the film who were actually based on folks that my friends met through the shenanigans of it all. But, to be clear, we not trying to get into any trouble with Mr. Rodriguez here. This was inspired by that coincidence, but, what happened and what transpired with him in his life, we really don't know the realities of it all.
As an indie filmmaker myself, I know that when writing a screenplay, even if the story is based on real events, you have to take a certain amount of creative and artistic license in order to make the movie somewhat believable and hopefully one that the audience will be able to relate to. How much of the film is actually based on real events?
I mean, really, like I said, we've got 3 characters who were folks that my friends met while they were, flying under the auspices of being part of A-Rod's crew. We had the actual phone swap in a what's similar is, our Brett, the real-life Brett, like our Brett in the movie, was also at a down in his life, recently had gotten out of the relationship and was feeling a little bit bummed out. And this phone falls into his lap. And like in the movie, at first it was annoying that he was getting text messages that his phone was blowing up all day long. One of the original working titles of Lucky Number was actually Blowing Up. BLOWN apostrophe blowing up. So
blowing up, right.
So, which I always loved, side note, but when we were pitching around, people said, no, people are going to think it's an action adventure, and they're not going to get, like you just did, you heard it at first as blowing up, where instead of blowing up, like cell phones blowing up, and my life is blowing up at the same time. But he was getting these just incredible amount of crazy text messages, but he was getting a lot of attractive women in compromising positions. So his friends and his brother were kind of like, are you kidding me? You're not getting rid of that phone. Oh, this is great. We got all these, great pictures. And then one day they were basically, the first time they used the phone, is they were literally, the 3 of them, Brett, his brother, and their buddy from high school were sitting around, and they were kind of miserable on like a Friday night. We got no money. What are we going to do? And a text message came in, hey, Álex, you're on the list tonight to the opening night of the Supper Club, which was, around that time, which is, I think around 2008, was a kind of a chic joint in the city that had just opened up a week or so prior. And, the first week Madonna was there, and I believe that Justin Bieber and Justin Timberlake, a bunch of very big stars were there the first week. They were able to, that was the first night where they were just kind of sitting around, no money, nothing to do, and this thing comes in. And then one of them kind of said, tongue-in-cheek, well, what if we responded, pretending to be A-Rod, and we told them, he, said he couldn't make it, but, requested to put us, his friends, on the list. And everybody just kind of looked around at, like, this moment of, like, holy, what moment. And after about a half hour of discussing it, they went for it. And that was the first time they used the phone. Was sneaking into opening night of, I believe it was the Supper Club, I think.
Well, I loved the movie, and I gave it a very favorable review because it was the first adult comedy I'd seen in some time that reminded me of so many of the zany screwball comedies of the 80s, films like Porky, Stripes, and one of my all-time favorites, Up the Creek. What I really liked about Lucky Number, though, was that you guys didn't try and tone it down to PG-13. Instead, it was aimed at the adult crowd, and I appreciated that because too many studios these days, I feel, will shoot a film, whether it's a raunchy comedy or even a horror movie, but then ultimately cut it down to a PG-13. Did you guys ever wrestle with that aspect, or did you decide from the get-go that there would be an adult-themed feature?
No. Well, first of all, I thank you for the great critique that you gave us. I appreciate it, and it's very funny. Being a kid who was weaned on 80s movies himself, I never, until I saw the headline to your review, it never even dawned with me that what I had written was kind of something from my childhood in that aspect. And it really, that was the first time anybody had said that to me. I'm like, excuse me, wow, it really does have an 80s feel. So that was pretty cool. And yes, we were told to, from day one, I had fought James at every step of the way, like, to keep this thing R. It's a raunchy buddy comedy. It's a New York story. And really, the early drafts of the script were much rawer. Things just kept getting a little bit watered down as part of the process. We were told or recommended by some of our friends in distribution, although we didn't have any pre-sales or anything, but we were told, hey, shoot hard R, but be able to edit to PG-13. Quite honestly, our budget was so tight, and we shot so many pages. I think that we averaged 11 pages a day, and we shot 14 on 2 days. So because we were moving at such a fast pace and our budget was so tight, the ability to edit to a PG-13 kind of went out the window, but we didn't even really realize it until we got into editing, and we were like, holy crap, we don't have the PG-13 here. But
that's a good thing.
Yeah, well, and to me, it made me happy. I'm probably the first person I've ever shared this with, but it made me happy because not even having the option then meant that my vision was really going to come to fruition. I think where we landed was a really good spot. There was one or two moments that they were our first couple days of shooting, and, there was some real great raunchy comedy which just really wasn't usable because everybody was still a little green and the feel of each other, and so we lost a little bit there, but for the most part, I always said we want to have a super raunchy comedy, but we've got to have a really classy female lead, and we have to have a great love story because it'll allow us to get away with some raunchy stuff.
Well, one of the many reasons the film worked for me, and probably most important, was the undeniable on-screen chemistry between the movie's two leads, Tom Pelphrey and Natalie. From the first time they meet, you just know that they need to be together. But naturally, being a romantic comedy, they have to overcome many obstacles. What was the casting process like?
Well, the casting process, Natalie was our first choice, and she was super interested, and she had a relationship with our casting director. And that fell into place pretty quickly. We had some, getting Brett cast was a little more challenging because I think now, hindsight, we weren't going after the right type of person. We wound up getting someone, and we got into negotiations with that person and their team that went on for way too long. His team was asking for way too much, and one sentence was saying, hey, I understand that you guys are, a modified low budget, but then he would turn around and ask for things that were completely unrealistic. So lesson learned, I, as the producer, accept responsibility. I spent way too much time negotiating with someone that really wasn't trying to negotiate. And next thing you know, we're about literally 2 days before production. Actually, it was 3 days, but it was a long weekend. We started production. Monday was President's Day. We started on the following Tuesday. So on that Friday night, I had just finally said, all right, we're done with this guy. It's not going anywhere. DEFCON 5, where do we go? My second AD, Dion Matthews, had just made a film with Tom, and he said, hey, I know this great guy. He's a pro. I said, okay, let's do it. We reached out to his agent, manager, late on the day on Friday. She read the script that night. He read it Saturday. I met Tom for breakfast in Midtown Manhattan on Sunday. We had breakfast. He's a Jersey guy. I'm a Jersey guy. He got where we were looking to go with it. At that point, I really liked him. He had long hair. I said, all right, man, let's do this. Are you willing to cut your hair? And he said, yeah, I'm willing to cut my hair. But we had our wardrobe, our hair and makeup girl come in on Monday morning, give him a haircut. He rehearsed with Brendan that day for a couple hours and literally showed up on Tuesday morning at 6 a.m. and we started. And he killed it. It took about 2 days for our buddies to get into sync, and then Malcolm, Joey, Tom, once the three of them got into sync, man, they killed it.
They did a great job. I noticed every time Mr. Pelfrey and Miss Hall were on screen, either together or separately, they embodied traits and mannerisms inherent in both Justin Long and Rachel McAdam. Am I the only person who picked up on that, or was that a deliberate tactic?
Yeah, no, we really weren't trying to emulate anybody. That situation just worked. They just came together. First of all, they're both just really nice people, as real life human beings. Just, they're both a little soft spoken and polite and kind people, and they just seem to mesh. And really, what was funny is we felt on set. Me and at least one of my partners would go home at night, and we felt their relationship wasn't working. And we kept saying to Brendan, hey, try this, try that. And I think we wrapped production feeling that relationship was going to be one of our weaker ones or more challenging ones to develop. But as soon as we saw them up on screen, it was like literally like from, moment one in the editing room, like, oh my God, like this is playing really well. That was a really cool lesson for me as a first-time filmmaker. What you're seeing live action, on set, quite well can translate into something completely different when you get it on screen. And everyone from day one has just adored that storyline. And Natalie, she's a sweetheart and comes through and really resonates with people. Again, allowing us to get away with some raunchy humor.
I love the raunchy humor. I mean, without giving anything away, there were a couple of scenes like when Tyson.
Yeah, Method Man, yep.
Yeah, when he's in the room there with the girl, she's dressed up like a cowgirl or something, or he is. There were some moments in there that really made me laugh out loud, and I was like, oh my God, this is great.
Yeah, well, that was that whole twisted scenario. I guess I'm proud to say it came from my mind. I just thought at first I started playing with, him. That the character was into S&M and, into some really dark, sadistic type stuff. And it just kept taking the story in a weird direction. I had Tiffany one day, well, what if we made it comical and he needed the sex to perform on the basketball court, and he was into some really fringe stuff, but it was just fringe comedic. So instead of people being like, ew, they were like, ha, ha, ha.
Right. Clifford Smith, a.k.a. Method Man, as many people are aware, is a rapper and music producer, but he's also appeared in many movies over the years, from dramas such as Copland, Garden State, and Red Tails to comedies like Scary Movie 3 and this year's Trainwreck with Amy Schumer. And being perfectly honest, even though I'd seen all those movies, he never grabbed my attention. But with Lucky Number, I feel that he practically stole the show because of his perfect comedic timing. How did you guys snag him for the role?
Well, Meth had a relationship with our casting director, Eve Battaglia. She had bumped into him on the street in New York City a week before meeting us, and he said to her something along the lines, hey, Eve, I'm tired of being a bad guy. Find me something, fun and light. This kind of fell into place, and which was a coup immediately for us is knowing the experience, knowing Method Man and Wu-Tang growing up. I knew that he was tall. He's 6'4", so right about there, it really helped sell the professional basketball thing. He was great, man. I honestly can tell you he was a true pro, there's always the rumors and preconceived notions about having a rap star as part of your cast and what all that comes with that. But whatever those are, it was nothing. He was a pro. He showed up every day on time. He was prepared more so than anybody on the cast. He was just really prepared. He knew his stuff dead every day, and he brought it for us. And there was a couple moments where we were warned, hey, you might have to rewrite this little thing. Some of the funny kind of, picadillos that the Saint is into with his, sexual life, as we discussed. People had kind of suggested to us, hey, this might not go over so well. You might have to tone this down a little bit. He was a champ, to quote him, balls to the wall. And he put himself in some goofy, compromising position.
He did, yeah. He was hilarious.
Yeah, and I think it's really part of the strength of the film. So he was great.
Well, you're listed on the movie as a writer and producer, and like you said, this is your first film. Because you wrote the story based on the events that you and your friend experienced, how much control did you actually have during the movie, and did you have a say in some of the big decisions that had to be made, like we talked about casting and even editing?
Yeah, James, I was pretty frenetic. I mean, I raised every cent of the money for this film. This was my vision. It was my baby. I had a super strong team, writing partner David Cornu, producing partner Mike Lynch, Brendan Murphy, director. I mean, all those guys were great, but, on this specific project, everything flowed through me. I was involved with every step because, I gave up a pretty successful career to pursue this dream, and I knew I was going to get one shot. I also felt because I'm a little bit long in the tooth for starting in this business, I didn't want to go down the road of, hey, I'm going to make a short. I'm going to make it. I felt this concept was too big. It was too real. The potential was there, and I was going to make a feature. I've got my name when I, coming from, quote unquote, the real world, when I borrow money, when I raise money from someone, they're putting their faith and their trust in me. And I'm not, my personality and my belief system as a businessman and a producer will never allow me just to roll over and say, hey, here's the money. I'm not going to have any say. Go do it. And in saying that, I'm not trying to, I never could have done it without the team. Everybody owns a little piece of lucky number. A great lesson for me is, making a movie takes a village. There's, some great ideas that we had came from a random member of the crew who just kind of threw something out, and somebody heard it and said, hey, that's not a bad idea. Let's play with it. And, next thing you know, it's being incorporated into the film. So it was a very collaborative experience, but I definitely oversaw all of it.
Did you ever think, as a producer, and I'm like you, I've been doing this for 30 years as an indie filmmaker, so I've produced and directed and edited. Since this was really your baby, as you said, did you ever think of stepping into direct, or did you want to just take a backseat and watch how that was done?
Yeah, no, look, that was just not an option. My plate was already way too full. And the reality is although prior to Lucky Number, I had never written or produced anything, I knew to stay in my lane. I felt real great about Brendan, and still do, about what he did and what his capabilities were. And I think how Brendan and I worked really well together is he brought a cinematic experience, cinematic point of view to it, where, I was just kind of always like, hey, we're a comedy, stay on point, we're a comedy. And we kind of found this middle. He was able to do some really cool cinematic stuff, like that great Scorsese shot, as everybody was very excited about one day on set, when the guys walk into the club at the end, when they walk into Decadent. You just have a great long steady shot with a steady cam through the
Steadicam, yes.
That was always the thing. I always said, all right, Brendan, I know that you want to do all these really cool things, but how do we do them within the time constraint and the budget? And everybody put their heads together, and we always found a way, I think, to make everybody happy. As you know, there's always challenges and discussions on set, and everybody's trying to get their point of view across. But look, one of the blessings was that we had such an aggressive schedule, and we were so tight on money that everybody kind of got it, and everybody manned up and said, all right, I'm gonna fight for my point to a certain time, and then I know I'm gonna win some and I'm gonna lose some. We got to get cameras rolling again.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, like I said earlier, I've been doing this for 30 years, so yeah, I know how difficult it is trying to get everything together. So, but I'll tell you something, I've worked with a lot of different producers and directors in my life, and just from talking to you, you sound like the kind of producer that has everything together. You know, as a director, you'd be the kind of producer I'd love to work with because you had everything set out and you knew what you wanted overall.
Yeah, I mean, I had a pretty clear vision for what this needed to be. And, when it comes to, certain, some of the projects I'm developing now, people I'm working with, I'm giving them a little bit more voice in the development process. But with this, it was like, hey, I'm the guy that grew up in the city. I'm the guy that lived this. I'm the guy that knows exactly. I mean, I just knew because it was who I am. Those characters are my friends. They're me. And I knew the voice and I knew the tone that was right. But look, at the end of the day, right now, it's me, you, and a handful of people that really love the film. Will vindicate or adjudicate me is the success the film has when it gets out into the world and the feedback that we get. And what I'm most excited about as a businessman and a producer is that this film, I really believe we're sitting on a profitable film. As a first-time filmmaker, producer, writer, for me, that's a home run.
Well, you founded the production and development company 36 Films in 2009, and with lucky number to your credit so far, you also hold the options to a couple of other projects. One's called Corruption Officer, and you have No Paved Road to Freedom and Bloodline. Do you see any of those coming to fruition anytime soon?
I think the one that's going to come to fruition the quickest is going to be Corruption Officer, and that's based on the true life story of Gary Hayward. Gary is basically he's Walter White, a really good guy that got sucked into some deep, dark stuff with the best of intentions. Was a decorated Marine in the first Gulf War. Got a job, grew up and lived his whole life in one of the toughest projects in New York City, the Polo Grounds in Harlem. And he got a job as a correction officer, which was supposed to change his life and, get him on the road to a better life. And then instead, he got, and rightfully so, he wasn't, he'll be the first to admit it, he wasn't a good dad. He wasn't taking care of his responsibilities. And his ex-wife came after him for child support, which just put him in a hole that he couldn't get out of. Which started out as selling tobacco so inmates could pre-roll their cigarettes. He was making $3,500 a week. He was sneaking in 31 pouches of rolling tobacco in his Kevlar vest a day and selling them. For about 6-8 months, everything was great. He was making his child support. He was able to, put a couple dollars away. He was able to get his own apartment. Then Mayor Bloomberg, Mike Bloomberg, became mayor and outlawed smoking in city buildings. That source of income nearly went away, and then it started as marijuana, and then cocaine, and then cell phones, and then he got wind that some female corrections officers were prostituting themselves out to the inmate, so he basically wound up organizing them and becoming their pimp, providing protection, and he ran a full-on criminal empire that extended to the outside. Because although he was selling and doing all of his activity inside, he had to source his drugs and all sorts of salacious things on the outside. He ran this empire for about 6 years, and then he got arrested. Basically, they said to him, look, you've never been in trouble, you're a veteran, this, that, the other thing. You've got literally about 15 minutes to make a decision. We'll give you 2 years if you plead guilty, and you'll serve every day of it, and you'll get out after 2 years. If not, we're going to go after you for 25 years, and we're going to get it because we got you dead to right. And he thought about it and took the deal, obviously, and in prison, as he says, he realized he was a bad father, a bad friend, a bad son, and a bad cop, and he had to change his ways. And he wrote the book. He self-published and sold it out of the trunk of his car for 4 years. And somewhere along the line, in the last 12 months or so, he got Simon & Schuster to pick it up. They rewrote and re-released the book on the 31st of March of 2015. A couple weeks before that, Gary and I signed the auction, and right now we're pitching Corruption Officer as a Breaking Bad meets Oz. We're pitching it as a cable series.
Oh, wow. So not a movie, but a TV series.
Yeah, we're pitching it as a cable series. And that's truly where I believe the project needs to be. So we're going to run that direction for a little bit, and the problem with that is, James, is we got to get a network and a whole bunch of different people to buy in.
Right.
Whereas if I say, you know what, because I also think it would make a tremendous film. I write the script, I pay someone to write the script, you give me a script to sell. If I believe in it, we'll go out and we'll get a film finance.
Right.
But my gut tells me it should be a series, so that's the direction we're going with that.
Well, Michael, I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us today. And Lucky Number comes out on September 1st on video on demand, and then it comes on DVD October 6th, where you can get it at Walmart, and then nationwide October 20th from Vision Films.
You got it.
Well, Mike, thanks again so much. I really appreciate it, and I look forward. I hope we can keep in touch and talk about your next project.
Yes, 100%. I thank you for the time. I thank you for the kind review, and we will stay in touch. And when I get down to Dallas to visit my buddy in the next 12 months, because I'm definitely coming down, we'll get together for a cold beer.
That sounds great. I appreciate that. I look forward to it, too.
Thank you, James. Have a great day.
All right. You too. Thanks, Michael.